In beginner's mind, we have many possibilities, but in expert mind, there's not much possibilities. So in our practice, the important thing is to resume to our original mind or inmost mind, which we ourselves, even we ourselves do not know what it is. This is the most important thing for us. The founder of our school emphasized at this point. We have to remain always beginner's mind. And this is the secret of Zen and secret of various practice of flower arrangement, practice of Japanese singing, and various art. So the most difficult thing is to keep our beginner's mind in our practice. So if you can keep your beginner's mind forever, you are Buddha.
Thank you, and welcome all for coming tonight, the Pacific Zen luminaries. Tonight we have David Chadwick and Tassajara Stories. David, I wanted to play that clip because I think, one, the Tassajara Stories, the book about the first year in Tassajara, various vignettes and anecdotes and personal experiences of yours. In so many ways, Tassajara Zen Mountain Center, which is what this book is about, is the embodiment of Shunryu Suzuki in his teachings. And there's probably nothing more, I think, essential to Shunryu Suzuki Roshi's teachings than beginner's mind. So, David, welcome. And thank you for joining us from Bali, which is, that's a world away. Exactly. Good.
Can I say something about beginner's mind?
Absolutely.
All right. So that was one talk Suzuki gave. He hardly mentioned beginner's mind again. Maybe I think in the whole archive, the phrase beginner's mind, I think, is in there 18 times. And it was one of many approaches he had: way-seeking mind, big mind. He used big mind a lot. But it was one that really caught on, and for a number of reasons, and carries on into the future, and it's a big deal. It's become a beginner's mind. It's a lot of people use it; they don't even know where it came from.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful, and the fact of the matter is, when you guys went into Tassajara, when you bought the property in 1967, you had no idea what you were doing. You yourself had been sitting Zen for I don't know, maybe a year. Most of the other people were absolutely new to the practice, and yet you approached it with this true spirit, of not knowing, which is what we call beginner's mind as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, David, so you came to California, I guess, in about 1966 or so from
Yeah.
Texas. What brought you to brought you to California, and how'd you discover Sokoji, where Suzuki Roshi was teaching?
Well, I came out to San Francisco following pot smoking friends of mine from Mexico, because they said that was where it was happening. And, you know, but also I'd had, peyote and mescaline, LSD, not excessive amounts. I took it pretty seriously. And, but I had some, my experiences on psychedelics and the very fortunate sort of cosmic Christian, semi-Christian, non-theistic Christianity way I was raised made me think I needed a guru and to meditate, and I knew the hippie trip, semi-hippie, right? And say, was it was wearing out, and so I was checking out some places that had meditation. I was just on the verge of flying off to India to find a guru to sit in a cave with or something. I had these ideas, but I knew about the Zen Center, and because I bought some pot across the street from it, and it had been pointed out to me, and so I tried it out, and I liked it from the first day. And I thought, well, I'll do this for a year. I liked it, and then I decided to practice sitting, and I did that for a couple of weeks, and then I came back and decided to do it for a year, and to give it a chance. I thought, I'll do this every day for a year, and then without judging it, see how it works. Because I liked it, and I liked the people. Nobody asked me to join or to give all my money to them or anything. They were just sort of nice, quiet people. So I stayed, and I sat, and Suzuki wasn't there yet. Kanagiri was there, and he came, I don't know, a month after I started there, and he'd been in Japan, and I liked him, and it just continued.
I was looking at Crooked Cucumber, by the way, folks. This is just excellent. It's a really great book, biography of Shunryu Suzuki. His name from his teacher was Crooked Cucumber. But let me read just a real short quote, David, if I might, which I thought was really moving for me. I could see Suzuki in his office behind the crowd of people on the way out. Still, my mind was bubbling. He turned, caught my eye, and for the tiniest increment of time, everything stopped, and I saw him. I still hold a snapshot in my memory of that first moment when the man who had just become my teacher bowed to me. You still hold that snapshot of that moment. I thought that was really very touching.
Well, now that you've reminded me of it, yes. That's true.
And what did that moment mean for you? How did you feel about that moment?
Well, it was just that moment, and then I went on. I don't dwell on things like that. But that was, meeting him, and getting it sort of clicking. That happened, and then I go to the next thing. you know, because, you know, everything was practice there, right? So going to the Zendo, just like, you know, it's actually just boilerplate Zen. Going to the Zendo and sitting is practice, and chatting is practice, and walking out of the Zendo is practice, and bowing is practice, and walking away and walking down the street is practice. So I just continued.
And then you had a doksan with him where I guess you didn't know you're supposed to ring the bell, and then he comes out of the doksan room and tells you to ring the bell, and you go in. And I thought it was great that and pretty funny that you started asking him. He says, "Do you have any questions?" And you said, "Well, my mom has a question for you," and that was about reincarnation.
I know that's embarrassing. I hate to put that down on paper. Yeah. You know, I said, well, I don't really have a question. I'm sitting here, everything's fine. I like what's happening. But my mother believes in reincarnation. Yeah, what do you think about that? And he said, well, that's unusual. I said, well, I always have too, you know. I mean, it made sense to me. And he thought that was really unusual. And it was, you know. Yeah, I had a more relaxed relationship to him. And so my attitude wasn't reverent. It never was, you know? So but I, you know, I had to be careful not to be like, not to be flippant or buddy or treat him like a friend.
Yeah, and towards the end of that, you know, that cut, that I found it interesting and really telling about Suzuki as a teacher. You know, he says your life shouldn't be. This is advice to you. Your life shouldn't be topsy turvy. Just keep sitting here, and we'll get to know each other. Okay. And
yeah,
it's such
exactly.
a beautiful, simple thing to say. You know, hang out with the older students. He was telling you.
Right. And when he does topsy turvy, that's a phrase he used sometimes. You know, he had the teacher stick, and he'd go like that. You know, I remained pretty topsy turvy, and other people, everybody was a better student, you know. But you know, I just stuck with him, and I was neither too driven, nor I didn't have much doubt, and just continued, you know.
Yeah. You know, in Cook and Cucumber and your many other books, Zen is right here, and etc. There's more teaching by Suzuki, but what's pretty obvious in this book about teaching is just sort of his low and slow and steady and simple and clear style, which I don't know if it's because I've gotten older, but to me, it's just so appealing, you know. And like you say, I heard Suzuki say in a lecture that practice is enlightenment, not a means to attain it. So you don't have to seek enlightenment just to do the practice. And that was a great relief for you to hear. That kind of a teaching. Again, I guess you wrote a story about how Kaplo came to Sokoji in San Francisco, and you know, he was talking about koans and enlightenment and how you know, and he's a cousin of ours, and that you know,
Yeah.
Three Pillars of Zen was a very important book in my early life. But
very important.
Suzuki then gave a lecture, maybe the next day, and he said, you know, we go slow here. We go step by step, and we don't sit with expectation, which I thought was a wonderful thing to say.
Yeah, but you know, he would through the years he would always acknowledge uh, koan practice and Rinzai Zen as you know, just as good as what we were doing. So that was good because there wasn't an idea at Zen Center that we were better than other groups. And say, especially with the group you just mentioned, they were totally into, they were the best group.
Yeah.
And that was nice being with a group that, you know, people would always be interested in other teachers and, you know, what were they doing, and have books like from Baba Free John and, but, you know, reading, you know, Milarepa and everything. It was a very eclectic group in a sense. But, you know, the thing about Tassajara Stories that's different from the other books is it doesn't focus on Suzuki. It focuses on the Sangha. And the other books tell some, especially Crooked Cucumber, tells some about, you know, the background on students. But Tassajara Stories really gets into how people came, what the surroundings were like, you know, what sort of milieu. What was it? The war and you know, so many people's stories of how they got there. And then it gets into guest stories, you know, and stories that have nothing to do with Tassajara Zen, you know, and stuff outside of it. It's sort of a picture of the whole, it's sort of like, it sort of shows there's more to us than just being there at Tassajara. There was like the I mentioned in the preface, the shake, the which is the Japanese garden, that the shake is whatever is outside of the garden that you can see from the garden. That's still part of the garden.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it does a lovely job of that. So so you head down to, so I guess what happened is they had made a original payment for what was called the horse pasture.
Right.
I've only been to Tassajara once for a day, so I'm not as familiar,
Yeah.
you know, with these. But
Well, actually, the original payment for the horse pasture, it was decided to put on Tassajara.
yeah, yeah,
Richard Baker and Suzuki and Bob Beck and Anna Beck, and then the final with you know working it out. But the Tassajara was always the thing they had in mind. But they were willing to buy the horse pasture, and that wouldn't have worked very well. But it worked well. It's like a stalking horse to get us to start raising money till Bob Beck finally decided to sell us Tassajara, and Richard Baker made that deal with the Becks, and they came way down on price.
yeah.
It was a great deal.
Yeah, yeah, and so you went down. I'm kind of interested. Why did you decide to go and be part of the building in the monastery rather than stay in the city?
Well, I had gone down on some weekends, like in February, you know, just a month after we bought it, with like little work crews. We were sitting down and coming back, and it was great. I really loved it. And, but the city, you know, Suzuki and Katagiri were in the city. And so it kept building up. And I talked to Suzuki about it, and he thought, I said, what do you think, or whatever. I can't remember. I might have said I'd sort of like to go down, but I wasn't sure. And he said, well, it's better you be here with older students right now. But then Silas, who was sort of in charge of Silas Hoadley of getting all the enormous amount of work done that we had to do before the guest season started in May 1st. It was decided pretty early. We'd continue the guest season, open it May 1st, and have the first practice period in the summer, starting early July. I think it started July 3rd. So there's a lot of work to do. So Silas told me I could go. I could go in a couple of days if I was ready. So as I tell in Tassajara Stories, I sat down with Loring, and we had to hit off some maybe Acapulco Gold, and sat there with some incense, and he opened the I Ching book. I didn't know anything about I Ching, but he was into it. And through the sticks or whatever, I can't remember. And the line I saw, and it was decide, should I go or not? Because I was really sort of neutral, and I was living at Lawrence, which was wonderful. We had like a little mini practice going on there. But anyway, the important line in that I Ching reading was, the South furthers. And Tassajara was south. And then it was sort of like, oh, okay, that's it, I'm going.
You rode in the back of an El Camino, I guess a red El Camino or something, freezing all the way down, and you get out and you open the back of the El Camino for you, and your first touch of Tassajara is you're falling down on all fours, and you found
that was on that was on the first work trip I went there with Silas. That was Silas's El Camino, and they had like 3 or 4 of them in front and me in the back going down. You still didn't get arrested for riding in the, they didn't stop you for riding in the back of a pickup back then. And on a freeway and stuff. And and we came in over the mountain, and it was snow and cold, but I loved it. It was beautiful. And then when I got out, but also looking behind as you're going is a little disorienting. And when I got out, I just like collapsed right down on the floor. So my original contact with Tassajara ground was like fainting on it, or I didn't lose consciousness, but just falling down on it.
So people who haven't been there, I'm sure many of the people on the call have been there and even spent many years there. Can you explain kind of where it is and what it's like, what its sort of geographic layout is? And
well, Tassajara is, I think of it as 4 hours south of San Francisco. I can get there quicker than that, but you don't want to drive the road like I used to. And you go down Highway 101 is the quick way, and you get off at Salinas. You can get off at Monterey, but that's slower. Get off at Salinas and go over Los Lograles Grade, hit the Carmel Valley Road, past Carmel Valley, and then you go to a little burg called Jamesburg in the country, which is, there's no store or anything. It's just some homes. And then there's a there's a dirt road begins there, and it's 14 miles, and it goes from about 1,300 feet to 5,000 feet back down to 1,300 feet and 14 miles. And that's a terrific road, and it's very frightening to people coming down. The coming down part gets really steep, and there's drop-offs. And back then, I mean, and the road had to be fixed for guests to come in the spring, and we were going in the winter, and we'd go. I mean, there'd be times where we'd get out, and there'd be a board that the right wheel wheels would go over, because that part of the road had fallen out.
It was a drop
And,
off under the board, basically.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and yeah, and and different types of drop off. Some of them into woods, and some of them, as the further down you get, there's no woods. It's like, it's a drier landscape. But anyway, and it's very curvy, and it goes down and down with switchbacks, and it comes into Tassajara, which is a fairly narrow canyon, and there's a creek that runs through it, Tassajara Creek, and it's got hot springs, and it's Monterey County's best known old resort. So with COVID, it closed to guests, and for everything changed after COVID. I'm sure your group has noticed that, and they couldn't get the same students and stuff to run it as before, and it hadn't really had a guest season since they let some local people in, but they're working toward having guests again. But they have these workshops now. They have a whole summer when their practice periods are fall and spring, fall, winter, spring. But they have these workshops like May through maybe May 1st through September 15th or something, that where people would come with different teachers and be there for 2 weeks, different things. People would come and be staff. And it's basically more run as a practice center year-round now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's beautiful. And the hikes up creek and down creek are gorgeous. Yeah. And it's fairly dangerous territory. Death Valley is called Death Valley because one person died when a wagon train went through. Tassajara, people die in the Los Padres National Forest all the time. They get lost. It is very dangerous country. We've had a lot of people lost, and only one person has died. And that was a student, like last year, who fell off a waterfall. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, you describe how rugged it is, and so when you first went down there, you called the group of beginners, if you will, the vanguard. And I love your language in the book about describing it, how Zazen at 8 around a glowing cast iron stove, crawled in my sleeping bag in a cabin as cold as the night to a lullaby from Tassajara Creek. And then you were sleeping outside, fell asleep with stars in my eyes. It just takes us there into that rugged Tassajara Valley, and the feeling of the stars, just countless stars.
Yeah.
Sound of the creek. It's beautiful.
Yeah. And I lived there 2/3 of the time for 10 years.
Yeah.
And that was great. And then I'd come back, started off being sort of probably an irritating grunt. And when I left, I was head monk and director. And that's the third book, is the years after Suzuki. Second book, the first book takes you through 67. The second book is the rest of the Suzuki years, 68 through 71. And then the third book is Richard Baker's first 4 years. The first one at the city center, the second one at Green Gulch, and then the last two at Tassajara. I'm head monk and director. But even in the parts where Green Gulch in the city, there's all sorts of stuff happening at Tassajara that I tell about. So that's all woven in and out there.
Well, we look forward to it. We look forward to that.
It's how many of us are alive by the time the third book comes out.
And so another thing, I just, my notes, I'm really touched by the small things, the small gestures that Suzuki made that changed people's lives. Like the story of Peter Schneider, who he hadn't cried since he was 13, and he's in the Zendo. He starts to cry, and he goes out. He doesn't want to disturb people, and Suzuki just goes out and touches his shoulder, and I think doesn't even say anything, but somehow,
Right.
You write that it changed Peter's life, just that one touch on the shoulder.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of stories like that from people. Yeah, Suzuki was really great at creating relationship with somebody so that he could communicate. But actually, when he first met some of them, with saying and doing very little, and that was back in '63, I think, when Peter first came. Because that's a story telling how Peter, ended up being at Zen Center.
Yeah. And then there's this great story about you. You're driving Suzuki up. I hope you don't mind if I bring up stories like this, but you're driving.
Good Lord, that's why we're here.
You're driving up to San Francisco, and so you say, Suzuki Roshi, may I ask you a question? You ask earnestly, and he says yes. And then using an abundance of verbiage, I earnestly expressed how totally devoted I was to follow his teaching. And I told him I'd do whatever I had to do, and went on and making sure that he was thoroughly aware of my sincerity and dedication. Just tell me what you want me to do, and I'll do it. And you look over for an answer, and he's sound asleep.
Yeah. Now that story is the beginning of Thank You and Okay. And I tried to include as little as possible from Thank You and Okay and Crooked Cucumber, but that one was just too cool not to put in there. And it's very brief, doesn't take up much room. And I sort of retell it, I reword it, and I give some more detail about what was happening at the Thunderbird bookstore in Carmel Valley. Anybody that remembers the Monterey area, the Thunderbird bookstore started in Carmel Valley, a very small little coffee shop bookstore, moved to Mid-Valley, and then moved to Carmel, and was a big deal in Carmel for many years, and finally went out of business not that long ago. But it tells what book I got, and Kale Gibran mentions him and the importance of him. Well, that is a typical new student story, an idiot. But
that's great. It's great. I remember coming across the prophet hitchhiking in a white van from San Francisco to Seattle. Everybody was in the back, reading that book. But so now you're moving into monasticism, really, whether you're priests or whether you're lay people still, and you enter what's it called, Tangadio? Is that
you got it?
The 3-day sitting, and tell us about going into that. Was July and August, I guess, right, of 1967, summer of love, by the way. So tell us about moving into that more serious
67. It was, and the human being was in January. See, so I went to the human being. Okay. That was in January before I went to Tassajara. So I was there, and Suzuki was there, sitting next to Allen Ginsberg and Gary Snyder and Timothy Leary, with an enormous crowd. Tangario is a tradition in Japanese Zen monasteries, at least, where you and quite like, I don't really know. quite likely in others, Tendai Shingo and stuff, they said Zazen and have temples and where monks are. And it can be various lengths of time. Like at Eiheiji, it can be, more like a week. I've heard of 10-day Tengaryos. And at Tassajara, so the first one, we had a 3-day. Suzuki wanted 5 days, but Baker's just felt too many people. I mean, we lost a lot of people in the Tangaryo. And, but afterwards, they became 5 days. We were the lucky ones because we've been through it, right? But all right, so the thing about Tangaryo, it's different from a sesshin. In sesshin, you have the periods, and you get up and having kinhin, walking sounds. In Tangaryo, you're just sitting all day, and you have your meals, and you have a brief break after the meals. And the difference, as Richard Baker explained it, after talking with Suzuki and maybe Kobun about it, Kobun Shino, was that this isn't, all you have to do is stay in that spot. If you move, whatever happens, just stay in that spot. Now, there were people who would sit full lotus through the whole Tangaryo. Amazing. Super Zennies. But, people got through, but there were a lot of them, as Tassajara Stories says, occasionally you'd hear somebody walking out and then hear their car driving out the road. So we lost about 15 people at that first Tangaryo. I think that's what other people remember. A lot of my memory, I don't know what I remember and what other people do a lot because I've been getting other people's stories for 30 years. But anyway, we still had a lot. We had too many. We had like 80 people when it started. And we never had that many again.
So, you more ritual, more rules, right? You're moving into now a training period. And you talk a fair amount about rules in various, parts of the book. And you say that actually Suzuki really was not that big on rules. He wasn't like this harsh taskmaster in terms of rules.
Well, he was on both sides of it. See, he liked balance. And our tendency was to want more rules. And I took a story out of Crooked Cucumber and repeated it as the first rule of Tassajara. Like I said, I did very little of that, but I just thought it was so important. Was before the first practice period, say there's like a dozen, 15 students there getting things ready, and Suzuki comes down, and we're sitting there, and Bob Halpern, who's been sitting at Sokoji Sessions for a couple of years and sitting with he'd sat with Yasutani and the others, and he'd read a lot, and we had we were very new. We were just getting the place ready, and he raised his hand and said something like, "Shouldn't we have more rules like they do in Japanese monasteries? And things are pretty lax here, and people are talking in the baths, whereas you said the baths are one of the places of zazen and practice." And Suzuki said, "Yes, rules. You're right. We need more rules." He said, "Oh, that broom over there, it's standing on its bristles. That'll bend the bristles. Stand it on its, its handle, and then that won't bend the bristles." He said, "There, that's a good rule." So I call that the first rule of Tassajara.
Yeah.
We did have some others, but they were unspoken, obvious rules.
And you mentioned that you're not necessarily the best rule follower in the monastery, but you had a period when you were with guests. You had stayed up, drinking with guests, I guess, the night, and you had missed the morning. And you were in a leaders meeting drinking tea that morning, and somebody said, trying to get Suzuki to sort of publicly shame you to follow the rules better. And he says, shouldn't somebody, be punished for this? And Suzuki was he was actually really protective of you.
Yeah, that's a story out of Crooked Cucumber that happened in like 1970. I don't know why I was going to morning tea. I can't remember. But Nils, my dear friend Nils, said, Suzuki Roshi, I'd come. I'd been up with guests. I ran the guest dining room, and I had missed morning zazen and breakfast and everything. I just got up for the morning tea. Now, I didn't do that much. I mean, that was unusual. But he said, what do you think of a student who brazenly breaks the rules of the monastery? And he said, well, you can break the rules and still follow the spirit of the rules. He said, yes, but can't you follow the rules and follow the spirit? And he said, yes, that's the best way. So again, he wasn't worried about me not understanding. He was more worried about people becoming, getting too far over on that straight, judgmental, shaming side. So that he balanced it. It was always a matter of balance, but at times he'd be on the other side and say, we have to be stricter. We have to follow the rules. And then sometimes he'd get really, we're going to have strict, unbending rules, It just depends, if we got too lax, he'd be on that side. So that's the basic thing with, the sixth patriarch pointed that out. All you have to do, your student, he was telling his disciples as he was dying, they're going to be on one side of the pair of offices. You just go to the other side.
That's great. And then you have some great stories about in Sesshin, one where you're just standing there sort of looking at the gloaming, the setting sun, and a fox comes up, runs you're dead still, a fox runs up and just sort of curls up almost right at your feet.
At my feet, not almost, really, just 3 feet in front of me. Yeah, I was standing there. It was a sesshin. It was like 5th day of sesshin, my first sesshin, and my first 7-day sesshin. And I'm, looking at the sunset. It's a break after dinner. And this fox walks up, and I'm standing very still, right? And I see it out of the corner of my eye, and it walks closer and closer, comes right up to me and lies down at my feet and goes to sleep. And then I just stand there, and it's there, and I wasn't going to move. And then I can hear in the distance the Hans start to hit for returning to the Zendo for Zazen. And, the fox, after a minute, got up and uncurled and, stretched and walked away. Back where it came from, too. It didn't keep going in the same direction. So that's one for the American Indians there.
Which they've been going to Tassajara, you said, for, I don't know, thousands of years?
Thousands.
And multiple tribes, and so they're all getting along and just hanging out in the hot.
Yeah, that was Esalen Indian territory. And the Esalen were unique. They had a unique language that wasn't related to any. But California, Indians had the greatest, California had the greatest language diversity in the world. I learned in anthropology back in 1965 in Mexico City, before Europeans came. And he said, it still does. Yeah, Tassajara was, the Esalen were there, but Indians from other tribes would come from as far away as Oregon to go there. It had a reputation. They built sweat lodges, and you know, and the name Tassajara meant a place where meat is hung to dry. In some, I mean, that is undisputed by etymologists, and I've never read anything else, but then I've read it over and over. I've always wondered, really? And so there was a lot of game then. There were deer, there were bear, there were fish. I mean, earlier in the century, people would come there and fish, you know. And one thing that you had little of Bill Lambert, the neighboring rancher, there in the first book, and there's more in the later books. And there's one point which I'm with him. He's cutting getting some firewood from off his ranch to burn at home, and then he says, "You see that grape?" And you know, we're at, you know, in October. He says, "That's run dry." He says, "You know, all the creeks ran year round before they started testing the atomic bomb." So it was different. There's been changes in the environment there, and in the, you know, the human race has wiped out an estimated half the animal and half the vegetable and half the insect population in the world, and it didn't just begin in the last few years. It's noticeably down from, if you look at what you read about Tassajara before we came in the mid-60s, it was noticeably down from them. And boy, I sure see it in the oceans here. You know, it's depressing to go snorkeling if you you know, really pay attention to the coral and what's happening. Now the coral is the first, like, official, in my understanding, tipping point has gone over, that we've gone too far with coral and we can't stop it from dying. But we'll see what happens. It might make a comeback in that different world.
Yeah, let's hope. Let's hope. Pray. So Ben, Ben, we're not going to play the second clip because I don't think the quality is good enough. But
yeah, what happened to the quality there?
Yeah, I don't know. We
go to ShunryuSuzuki.com.
We tested it was good, but
yeah, you can hear all that.
David, this goes into the record of Chadwick. You know, the koan book of David Chadwick. Can you sing that session song for us?
Oh,
and then we'll go to some Q&A.
That's true. The same first session.
Page 140 of the
day after the fox, I'd say probably the 6th day, of session. I went out there to Grasshopper Flats, and I was walking back. I've got to get to that. Here we are. I was walking back, and I just, you know, I've written songs since I was in elementary school. My mother wrote songs. And I just, this song just came out of me. Walking down dusty road, sure am feeling fine, finest feeling ever known, because it is not mine. Garden grows, river flows, manzanita, oak, and pine, finest feeling ever known, because it is not mine. In the days there are gnats, in the night there are bats, in between suns come and go. The mountains so high and the clouds they float by, What else is there to know? Walking down dusty road, sure am feeling fine. Finest feeling ever known, because it is not mine.
That's great. I love that. I love that. Thank you, David. So I'd like to ask John Tarrant if you might, if you have any questions and comments, and Allison, and then we'll turn it over to the folks.
Well, thanks, David. It's good to hear you. I remember a song you sang after, I can't remember, it was after a session or something, which was along the lines of "I hate Zen."
Yeah.
I thought that's what you were going to come out with, but it was
that was later.
Yeah, that was part of your role, really, is to say the contrary thing. Everybody's saying, "Isn't this grand?" And you say, "Oh, I don't know about that." So I always enjoyed that side of your Dharma presentation. So yeah, I don't know. It's sort of it's this wonderful dream that we've had, like making Zen in America, and it's lovely to hear the stories of Suzuki, and you live. What do you think? How are you with where Zen is right now? Let me ask you that. How are you with whatever that question means?
Yeah, I'm pretty positive. I am. I see the Dharma as moving forward with flawed people in flawed ways, and that's the way it's always been. The histories we've got are ideal. Everything's painted in ideals. Not everything, but a great deal. And there's different expressions of it. The San Francisco Zen Center has, their way of doing it. But actually, within the San Francisco Zen Center, there's all these different teachers and things happening. But they tend to wear a lot of robes and do, they've done a lot of sessions and, formal practice. And there's all these more informal groups around the country, and there's just different approaches and everything. It's all great. And I don't judge things in terms of numbers, but the spirit, and I think it's all great. Of course, I've spent a lot of time with you and your group, and I've found it very inspiring. And I appreciate the PCI being the fiscal sponsor of Cuke Archives. And I appreciate Dharma Sangha. And then right next to you is Bill Kwong and his group, and they've got, their own way. There's all sorts of stuff happening. I like it. I think it's good. I mean, there's plenty to criticize, there's plenty to criticize, but.
Yeah, I actually think, in the Khan tradition, you had people like Hakuin, who was kind of batshit crazy, mad genius, and so so I think, I don't know, those guys passed it on. We can pass it on, So,
right, right,
and I like that. It's like I didn't set off. I think you didn't. I didn't set off to do this with my life. It's just what unfolded and turned out. Well, teaching Zen,
Yeah.
So that was really nice. And I think the way that it, I don't know, in a way the Dharma grabs people and chooses you and sees you and sees other people, I can see.
Yeah. Yeah. I always liked your approach. It's, it's like hard to put your finger on what it is. It's sort of poetic.
Yeah, we try not to know what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, Suzuki had no particular teaching.
Yeah.
Really. He just said different things at different times, and it was sort of like once he gave a description of teaching, it was very much like the Diamond Sutra. He said, "We say it, and then we wipe it off the board." And then we say something else, and then we wipe that off. That's the sort of Diamond Sutra, seems to me. Something like that.
Right. Well, I was wondering, there are other people I notice on here who are actually in that book, like Ed Brown is here, and he has a role in the book. And do we want to hear from Ed?
My Dharma brother. Mm-hmm. We're all Dharma brothers and sisters, but Ed and I were ordained together.
Yeah, if you'd like to unmute, come on and join us. You'd probably press your space bar too. Yeah, there you are.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Yeah, I love being here with David, and from early on, I always have appreciated David, and my beloved friend, my Dharma brother, and what I appreciate about David is he's so good at being David. And there's just nobody who could do David the way that David does. I mean, of course, it's what Suzuki Roshi said, when you are you, Zen is Zen. So Zen is doing okay. If David could be David, then Zen is Zen. And by the way, I'm also was remembering just before we started, wasn't there a story about Baker Roshi or someone getting off the seaplane in Port Townsend or something, and somebody said, and he said, "Yeah, I was just coming from Tassajara," and they said, "Oh, you mean Chadwick's place?"
Well, wait a minute. He was on a flight very soon after he became abbot, and mentioned to somebody that he was the abbot of Zen Center or something, and they said, "Oh, really? Do you know Ed Brown?"
Well, that's because of the Tassajara bread book, but yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's always been, and we are so different, you and I, and it's one of the things that's to me so remarkable about, and I loved what you said about this is a book about Sangha, because, and you're so good at that, because you talk to everybody, and then you remember the conversations, and then it's astounding to me, because I barely say a word to anybody, and mind my own business, and like to think I'm practicing beginner's mind or something.
I hear about you from a lot of people. Whatever you say or do has certainly touched a lot of people. I hear about you a lot. A lot of people really care about you.
Thank you, sweetheart.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah. One of the things I've always liked about you, David, is you have a broad vision of the Dharma, and including lots of different kinds of people. David lived in, we have a barn with an apartment, and David lived there for quite a long time, actually.
Yeah, 9 years, probably 8 years.
Can I leave my stuff here while I go traveling around the world? Sure, Do you think I could stay here just for a little while I get my act together? It's so great. And then when you started, and so David was he was a center for the Dharma in the barn apartment. He and then and so on. So
yeah.
So I kind of always liked your openness to other traditions, and me too, like the Khan people and stuff, and also don't know, I felt like your some of us had an ability to get into trouble, and I always thought appreciated that, that it was okay to break some of those rules, I like that. So yeah, and then when you started, you wanted to fund your crooked cucumber thing, then we decided we had the apparatus to do the accounting for it, and our then treasurer said she'd do that for you as a gesture of goodwill, and I think that's still happening actually. And I gathered a whole lot of teachers, Buddhist teachers, to say nice things about you and get money for you. But you're a very hard person to raise money for, I remember, because you say, "Oh, I know."
Yeah.
And I'd say, "David, I will raise money for you as long as you don't say anything."
Yeah.
Kind of sweet. Very that modest thing, which for maybe it's the other side of being Texan, So
yeah. I certainly wasn't raised. Texas raised me to be a braggart.
Yeah.
A braggart.
Anyway, it's wonderful having you for such a long time in my life, and you wandered off into Southeast Asia, basically. So
yeah.
Nice to see.
Yeah, I sure appreciate it. You're one of the, your support has been crucial to Cuke Archives continuing.
Well, it just seems such a good project, and thank you for doing it.
Yeah.
And what else?
We've got another luminary on. We got Franco Stasecki. I don't know, Frank, if you want to unmute and join in the conversation.
Oh goodness.
No, I just came to listen to David's stories because he's such a good storyteller. And,
wow.
And I have such a fondness for your work, David. Thank you for everything you've done. Yeah.
Wow, the feeling's mutual. What you've done with hospice work and death and dying and everything has just been so impressive.
Well, I'm thinking of Suzuki. When we first opened the old guest house to be a hospice, the first thing I did was make an altar downstairs with Suzuki's picture, and that was the first thing we did, of course.
Yeah,
I can tell you, David, that there were a number of people who were patients there and family members there who would say, "Who's that guy downstairs?" And then they would ask me to bring the picture up to their room because they felt very comforted by his presence. And so I appreciate you sharing his life with all.
Yeah.
It gives me a great comfort, actually, when I hear stories from you.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. I was on the board when we asked you to do that. And that was a great decision. And you carried it much further than we could have.
Well, I always felt like it was in Suzuki's lineage. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Allison, you too. You've been to Tassajara many times for, I think, with Naomi Shiab Nye. Is that right?
Yes, with Naomi and with Paul Holler. I have a question about Tassajara, but I don't know if you remember, David. The first time I met you is when you were living in the barn and at Grange, and I was here doing a workshop on ukiyo-e, teaching for PGI then. And when I met you in the kitchen, I told you that I had just read Crooked Cucumber, and that I liked it so much that after I finished it, I started from the beginning again and read the whole thing through a second time.
Wow.
You really liked that. So, and I still feel it was just a tremendous book. I really love Crooked Cucumber. Now, I want to ask you about the way-seeking mind. You said that Shunryu Suzuki spoke about that a lot. And you're one of the few people I've ever met who knew him. So my question is, all the times I've been to Tassajara, that's one of the first questions people often ask is, what brought you here? And back in the 60s and 70s, that seems like, and even into the 80s, there was a tremendous amount of energy and movement in the culture of young people coming to a Zen practice. But it feels like now that's really, you just don't see that anymore. So what do you see that too? And what's your feeling about that?
Well, I've been in Bali for 12 years, but I'm in touch a lot. It's like it'll all evolve, and there'll be high points and low points in terms of enrollment. But to me, we're just all interconnected and evolve in different ways. And, we live in such materialistic times now. We'll see. I mean, they're not just Zen. There's, the Vipassanas, the Tibetan people. There's so much. And I think Zen, all the various Zen influences have helped to inform the culture in ways that are deep. And so we'll see how it goes. And we being all of us, as we come and go, we'll see how it evolves. But I feel all right about it. It's just an ongoing thing, and to me, that there's no beginning or end to it.
Yeah. Oh, that's a lovely answer. Thank you.
No. Well, it's good to see you.
Let's open it up to questions, either in chat or if you want to unmute yourself, it'd be fine. We have, let me see in chat. We have here, Texas raised David to be unflinchingly honest. That sounds like another Texan speaking there. Anyone else?
Thomas Phillips put up a hand, which is probably a good way to attention, decide who to see. So.
Yes, indeed. Thomas.
Hi, David. Great to be with you. I've been to Tassajara 5 or 6 times in the summer, and Green Gulch and City Center, and read Crooked Cucumber and Beginner's Mind. And, something you've alluded to is Suzuki Roshi was kind of low-key, right? He didn't fit the Western model of, the leader who's out there and giving direction and so on. So and yet he had amazing results.
Yeah.
Do you think it was his low keyness that led to the results?
Well, it's very hard to say. It's nothing would have happened with him by himself. And he arrived at a very fertile time in history and in location, coming to San Francisco with, that's sort of the end of the Beat era, and a lot of the people influenced by that becoming, either students or involved with them in some way, and then the hippie thing and all that happened, but basically people interested in Eastern wisdom more than anything revolved around him, and so it was there. It was fertile ground. And yeah, it was sort of miraculous. He was patient. It was sort of, sometimes I saw him as a sort of zero in the center of all this that happened. And it all happened in 12 years. And I mean, that's how long he was in America before he died, 12 and a half years maybe. And yeah, it was sort of amazing. But it took, you know, I mean, Richard Baker was an essential element in it all happening. If you take him out of the equation, you can't say it would have happened like it did. But so many people, just all of us, the way, I don't know, it's just a great mix. But it needed him, but he needed them. He needed us, we needed him. And they say Buddha was great because his disciples were great.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question. I mean, it's very true. It's very true.
We have a question about how did you meet Ed Brown, David?
Well, I met Brown at Zen Center in '66, but we, you know, just say hello. But then when you know, and we'd pass, and I don't think we have either of us have any particular impression of each other back then. But then I went down to Tassajara and was with the group getting ready, and actually I'd been cooking. I'd been doing a great deal of the cooking, and Ed came, and he became the cook, and that was right. I really wasn't a cook. I wasn't qualified, and I was right away. Dick Baker asked me to run the dining room, so right away we became a sort of team. Because, you know, a month later, after he came, the guest season started, and he really knew what he was doing in the kitchen, and he whipped it all together. And he had both a sense of getting the work done efficiently and quietly, and he had a very strong sense of practice. You know, there's little altars everywhere, and groups start bowing, like a crew will come together and they'll bow, offer incense and bow at an altar. Ed started that. I don't remember Covicino or Suzuki saying anything about it. Ed started that in the kitchen, you know, created a little altar, and people would bow in. And so he brought, you know, a sort of form and discipline, and with that, it was totally non-judgmental too, because I was like a little crazy, and Bob Halpern was working with me at first, and we were very close, and we were like, you know, like a cyclone of confusion, and that wouldn't faze Ed. And we got everything, but we got everything done, and we got along with the guests, and the guests were happy. And then we went into practice period, and he was running the kitchen, and God, I don't know, I was just on the work crew then, because the dining room until the next guest season.
Any further questions here, either in chat or raise your hand?
Well, just to add, and please. Ed and I have remained close through the years. We have very different paths and everything, but we've always, you know, we've always kept up with each other and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, as we said, Ed was on 2 months ago in this series, and he was fabulous. Yeah.
Yeah, I was there.
Irene, how about you?
Hi, thank you very much. This is just great, and I've been listening to the books on Audible. Just thank you. They're great. I listen to them over and over again. I read a book called Fire Monks.
Yeah.
Were you there? Were you there when there was that fire?
No, Colleen Bush wrote that. Actually, I went over it with her a good deal, especially for mainly for the history stuff. But that was, what year was that? was like 2000 something, this forest fire, and Steve Stuckey was he Abbott, director Abbott, whatever. I don't think he was director. He was more, anyway. 8 of them stayed behind and defended Tassajara from a forest fire against the. The Forest Service went along with it finally. They wanted everybody to get out, but that was very heroic. Yeah. That was way decades and decades after my time.
I see. Well, I'm glad they did it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I'm glad you're listening to the audiobook. I'm just finishing up the audiobook for the second Tassajara Stories book.
I'm going to get the Crooked Cucumber now. Everyone's talking about that, so I have to listen to that next. Thank you.
Good. Please do. That's good. You got a great plan.
Henning Nathanson is on.
Yeah.
So I asked him to...
Yeah, thank you so much, David. It's been wonderful to listen to you. I'm wondering if I can get you to retell a story. It's one of my favorites. I think it's in both Crooked Cucumber and Thank You and Okay. It's Suzuki tells all of you that he's dying, and you say something about how you're all trying to be such wonderful, unemotional Zen students, and Katagiri just breaks down crying and crawls over to him and, says, as I remember, please don't die, Roshi, please don't die. So I just love to hear you tell it and embellish it however you want to be able to do that.
Yeah, that was right after Richard Baker's mountain seat ceremony. And that was Suzuki's last public appearance. And that is, I call that the emotional high point of, Suzuki's life. And it was quite an event because he was clearly dying. His skin had turned, people describe it different. I saw it as sort of brown, but, some people, it's sort of brown, yellow, some red, but it was sort of shriveled or something. They didn't seem to have, it was amazing he could still walk. This is just 2 weeks before he died. And he came in with a staff, and there was his son Hoitsu on one side and his wife Mitsu on the other, who took him up. And he didn't say anything. He just sat there, and others spoke, and Richard Baker became abbot. And then as he walked out, he paused, and his staff had like a sort of jingled on top. Might have been the staff Alan Watts gave him. I can't remember. Anyway, he looked to the left, and he put his hands around it to turn it, right? And it sort of jingled. Somebody put it down on the floor, and then he looked to the left. He looked to each side, did that, and that just was like a thunderbolt through the group. And then he walked out. And then very shortly afterwards, he met with his disciples and very, very close older students, Richard Baker sitting by him and Katagiri sitting by him. And he looked, okay. He was very pleased and smiling, but clearly not long for this world. And so, all of a sudden, Katagiri, who was not right next to him, who was, maybe 4 or 5 people over or 3 people over, just sort of wailed out, "Don't die," and walked on his knees over to Suzuki, sobbing and saying, put his arms around him and saying, "Don't die, don't die." It was just a very, and Suzuki said, "Daijobu desu," it's okay. It's okay. And, his attitude then was, don't worry, I'm fine. Everything's fine. This is all good. That was sort of the attitude that came out. But it was a very, very touching moment. And of course, Richard Baker, much sitting there right next to him, much taller than he is, just sat there while all this was happening. And it was a sad moment. Yeah.
Thank you, David.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Why don't we end it with that, David? That's a lovely story. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. I want to thank David Chadwick all the way from Bali, coming to talk to us. And so your contributions to the Luminary series go to the speaker. We think that our writers and our artists should get paid, and so we appreciate your patronage. And I
do too.
Keep an eye out for future series, and join us again. Thank you all for coming, and thank you, John, and thank you, Allison, and all those who spoke as well.